Hi, it's me, the storyteller. Thank you for joining me. Most of my stories on this channel are based on actual events, and some aren't. I'll let you decide if this story is fiction, or if it's not. On June 21st, 1985, police and emergency cruisers were dispatched to the quiet suburb of Bucks County, near Philadelphia, where reports of children screaming, loud crashing noises, and a single gunshot had taken place. When law enforcement arrived, they discovered a scene that would live permanently in their minds. 3 months earlier, Michael and Lisa Tavern, a couple in their mid-30s, had just moved into their dream home with their 2 children, Emily, age 10, and Tommy, age 7. Tree-lined streets and manicured lawns painted a picture of idyllic family life for the young family. Michael had just been promoted to vice president at a well-known telecommunications company, while Lisa satisfied herself as a homemaker, taking care of the children. Both Michael and Lisa were excited about their new home and looked forward to a long-lasting life in the neighborhood. But little did they know, their seemingly perfect life was about to take a horrifying turn. A few weeks had gone by, and the daily routines of the family had settled in. On the morning of April 9th, Lisa said goodbye to the children as they loaded onto the school bus. She waved, then walked back to their beautiful home nestled in the quiet cul-de-sac. As she stepped onto the porch, she noticed that the front door was open. She didn't give it much thought, as it seemed normal, with the hustle and bustle of getting the children's lunches and scurrying out of the house. After closing the door behind her, she passed by the kitchen and noticed a spilled carton of milk on the floor next to the refrigerator. She quickly cleaned it up, and again thinking that maybe, with the chaos of the morning, one of the kids had made a mess. The very next day, after walking the kids to the bus stop and seeing them off to school, Lisa noticed the front door ajar for the second day in a row. She closed and locked it behind her, giving it a longer thought, but again, she passed it off. Later that afternoon, Lisa prepared to meet up with friends for lunch and shopping, while Michael had planned on being home early for the kids after school. As Lisa backed out of the driveway, and with the front door scenario playing fresh in her mind, she made a mental note to close the garage door. She pressed the button on the opener and watched it go down before she pulled away. Later that afternoon, Michael pulled up to the house, and to his surprise, the garage door was open, but Lisa's car was gone. Although they lived in a quiet and safe neighborhood, this frustrated him. Both lived in the city prior to having children, so they had a healthy respect for safety. Later that evening, as the family enjoyed a simple meal of spaghetti and meatballs, Michael brought up the garage door with Lisa. To her shock, she pled her case and recounted the situation with the front door with Michael. They kept it between them as to not to scare the kids, but in the coming days, they made it a point to be meticulous with locking doors and shutting windows. 1 week passed, and as the family arrived home on Saturday night after a movie, they walked into the house to the sound of the television. Michael looked for the remote but couldn't find it, so he simply turned the TV off manually. After tucking the children in bed, Michael made his rounds around the house, checking doors and locks. After grabbing a quick sip of water from the sink, he heard the TV coming from the living room again. He walked around the corner expecting Lisa, but the room was empty. He called out to her, but she didn't answer. Moving to turn the TV off, he noticed the remote sitting plainly on the couch. He thought he was losing it. As he retreated to the bedroom, Lisa was already in bed reading her book. He asked if she had been downstairs, and curiously, she hadn't. He kept what had just transpired to himself, but it indeed kept him awake that night. Days turned into weeks, and subtle changes began to weigh heavy on the Tavern household. Small items would occasionally go missing, an errant sock here, a favorite toy there. Initially, they shrugged it off as just typical family life. But soon, Michael and Lisa noticed more disconcerting patterns. Doors they'd left locked would be unlocked. Lights would flicker at odd hours, and even more concerning, Emily had been telling her parents about shadow people moving in the hallways at night. During normal circumstances, Michael and Lisa would chalk it up to kids fearing the dark and wanting to sleep in Mom and Daddy's bed. But this felt different. A week later, the family installed a home security system and adopted a 2-year-old German Shepherd named Max. They felt it would give them and the kids a sense of comfort, knowing they had a good watchdog around. But just a few days later, Max went missing. Apparently, the gate to the backyard had been left open, and Max ran away. At this point, Michael and Lisa didn't know what to believe. Were the kids responsible? Did someone snatch Max away from them? Or was something else at play? That same night, as Lisa slept, Michael lay in bed wide awake. He couldn't help but wonder why so many odd occurrences had been happening. Just as he started to doze off, he heard a soft thump coming from the attic. He jostled awake, and then he heard the sound again. Chills ran down his spine. His thoughts ran wild and couldn't shake the feeling that he and his family were not alone. A nagging impression of unease began to gnaw at him. He tried to convince himself it was just the stress of everything. The dog running away, moving, or any other excuse he could think of. Instead, he forced himself to get up and check the house again. He pulled a flashlight from the junk drawer in the kitchen and stepped into the upstairs hallway, pointing the light to the attic door. What he noticed unnerved him. The attic pull-down cord was swaying. He thought it could have been the air from the AC moving throughout the house, but then he thought, could it not be the air moving throughout the house? He slowly pulled the cord and lowered the attic ladder. Only a second of hesitation, and he forced himself up and into the darkness. As he popped his head through, he quickly shined the flashlight in all corners of the room. The sound of a whimper was coming from the far side of the attic. And to Michael's horror, he found the dog Max, legs and snout bound and wiggling in the corner. Michael shuffled over and wrestled Max loose. He carried him down the attic stairs, and to his surprise, Lisa was waiting with both children in the hallway. He told the kids something about Max getting lost upstairs, hoping they would go to bed thankful that their new dog was back and not to ask about it again. When everyone was settled and Michael and Lisa were finally alone in their bedroom, Michael told Lisa how he'd found Max and that first thing in the morning, he'd file a police report. They knew someone had to have been in their house. Neither Michael nor Lisa slept the rest of the night. The next morning, as Michael promised, he drove to the police station and made the police report. An officer was sent to their house later that day and made a full sweep of the 5,000 square foot property, inside and out. Michael and Lisa were just a few steps behind the officer at every moment, explaining the unusual circumstances leading up to this point. But with no hard evidence, the only advice the officer could give was to call them back in the event something significant happened again. On the following Friday after work, Michael stopped by a local outfitter's store and purchased a .38 special revolver with extra ammunition. He did this without Lisa's knowledge, as she had a disdain for firearms and certainly would not approve of having one in the house with children. However, at this point, Michael needed to feel in control so he could keep his family safe. Days went by. Some were uneventful and others felt uneasy. Max would bark violently at nothing. Tommy and Emily complained about noises in the walls, scratching and shuffling sounds that crept into their dreams. One fateful evening, Michael went for drinks with colleagues after work, so Lisa ordered a pizza for the kids, played a board game, and then tucked them into bed. After cleaning up the kitchen, she poured herself a glass of wine and read a book in the living room. Minutes later, she glimpsed a shadow darting just outside the corner of her eye. When she turned to confront it, she found nothing but an empty hallway, the air heavy with tension. She turned on all the lights downstairs, checked every closet, and then poked her head in on the kids who were already sound asleep. A moment later, she heard the garage door opening. To her relief, Michael had arrived home. She didn't hesitate to tell him what had just transpired. They called the police, and within minutes, an officer arrived. It was the same drill as before, and to their confusion, nothing was found. Michael and Lisa both felt so paranoid at this point that they started to question even the normal things. Then came the night that would change everything. On Friday evening, June 21st, the family was preparing for a little weekend getaway to the Pocono Mountains. Michael and Lisa were looking forward to some time away from the house with the kids. A little hiking and some fishing could do them some good. The kids were playing in Tommy's room. Michael was packing in the bedroom, and Lisa was searching for their VHS camera recorder so they could capture some fun memories of their trip. But she had been unable to find it. She figured she had forgotten where she packed it in the move, so she stepped into the basement for a look. With no luck, She was about to go upstairs when she noticed a dusty tarp in the far corner. She approached and lifted it to reveal an old cardboard box she did not recognize. When she opened it, she found it contained various knickknacks that didn't belong to them. Among them were children's drawings, creepy scribblings of what appeared to be their family, but with unsettling embellishments. Lisa's heart pounded as she sifted through the contents. She called out for Michael. Then, underneath some of the items, she found their camera. She picked it up and hesitantly switched on the power button. She pressed eject, and it revealed there was a tape inside, labeled Tavern Time. At that moment, Michael stepped down into the basement. Lisa showed him the tape and the other items in the box. They quickly retreated upstairs to the living room and put the tape in the VCR and pressed play. What unfolded on the screen made their blood run cold. Footage showcased their lives, all captured from dark corners of their home. The children sleeping, Michael and Lisa laughing at dinner, and the late-night rituals of the family. Then the camera turned to reveal a shadowed figure sitting just beyond the reach of the frame, its gaze fixated on the family with an unsettling intensity. The tape ended, leaving the taverns in stunned silence. Someone had been living in their home without their knowledge. The intruder hadn't just infiltrated their lives. They had documented every joy and sorrow, reveling in the family's unwitting participation. Michael told Lisa to grab the kids and call 911 as he ran upstairs to the bedroom. He went to his side of the bed and reached between the mattress where he had hidden his new gun. But it wasn't there. He lifted the mattress up higher, and it was indeed missing. He questioned himself whether he'd put it there in the first place, but he had placed it there, and it had been taken. His heart sank to his stomach. Suddenly, Max began to bark ferociously from the other side of the house, accompanied by the screams of Lisa and the kids. Michael immediately rushed toward the commotion. When Michael reached Tommy's room, he burst through the door. To his horror, stood a tall, lanky man wearing disheveled clothes, holding Lisa and the kids hostage with Michael's .38 Special. The kids were crying, Lisa was pleading, and the man just stood there with a deadened look on his face, eyes sunken, with no remorse, no feeling. Then, through his teeth, he muttered,
"I just wanted to watch."
Without thinking, Michael leapt toward the man and began to wrestle with the gun. A single gunshot rang out and Michael fell to the floor. Lisa and the kids screamed in terror as the man rushed out of the room and fled the house. Local law enforcement arrived within 10 minutes, followed by emergency personnel. A neighbor walking their dog had heard the screams and called the police moments before the gunshot. Emergency medical staff were able to treat Michael's wound, as the bullet had grazed his ribcage and ricocheted into the wall. As Michael recovered in a local hospital, the taverns tried to piece together their shattered lives, but the sense of violation never left. A month later, Michael requested a transfer, and the taverns sold their beautiful new home and moved to Manchester, New Hampshire, where they could try to start over. The suburban dream that Michael and Lisa envisioned for their family had turned into an unimaginable nightmare, a tale of faceless horrors hiding amongst the unconsciousness of family life. In the end, not only had they lost their sense of safety, but they would forever be haunted by their chilling discovery, turning their suburban sanctuary into a sinister prison. In recent years, the term frogging became popular in Reddit forums and depicted in films and television that describe the act of someone secretly living in a person's house without the owner's knowledge, leaping from one house to another. After a detailed search of the tavern's home, it was discovered that there were 2 entrances to the attic and a crawl space in the basement, with ample room for someone to hide unsuspected. It was assumed the perpetrator gained access during the open house prior to the tavern's moving in. Police determined whoever he was had indeed tormented other families, as the box found in the basement revealed. The suspect that turned the tavern's life upside down was never identified, never to be found. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to the channel. Give it a like, a comment, and maybe a share. But if you didn't like the story, maybe share it with someone you don't like. In any case, I'm glad you stuck around to the end.